Welcome to the AXR Sales Director Incubator, the program that helps you have better career conversations and make great career decisions. My name is Mike Dixon. I lead the Sales and Marketing Division of AXR Recruitment and Search. And this morning, I'm delighted to be joined by Claire Smith, Sales Director for SC Johnson, our final guest of 2020. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you, Mike. Lucky last of the season.
Exactly. We'll save the best to last.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, guys, we're going to explore Claire's career as a team-first leader who spent 25 years working in sales, the last 15 of those within the Australian FMCG world, and working for Allied Mills, Henkel, and more recently in your first sales director role with SC Johnson, which I'm really looking forward to getting into.
Yep.
Now, guys, for those who perhaps joining the program for the first time today, which first thing I ask you is, where have you been? Well, we'll have to go on sessions, but if you're not used to the format, you are on mute, but we do encourage conversation in through the chat facility. So jump on any time, ask a question as it occurs to you, or at the end we'll have we normally allow about 10 minutes for Q&A. So if there's anything we haven't covered and you think I'd love to know that, then just note it down and I'll keep an eye on that. We'll get to it. So let's get into it, Claire. Now, one of the things as an avid trail runner, as people are starting to realize, and this topic has come up several times during the incubator, I am seriously planning on the launch of the AXR Trail Running Club for 2021. There's a connection there between finding a trail and finding a career path, but that was that's a bit cheesy. But anyway, now, will you be joining that club, or have other things occupied you during your time out of work this year?
Oh, well, first of all, yeah, I mean, I love the idea of trail running. I'm a runner, but not a very good fast runner. So a bit of trail running and shuffling would probably suit me.
Yeah.
Any opportunities to squeeze in exercise is definitely a good thing. But yeah, lots of has occupied me this year. Like everybody else, it's been a year like no other, I think, on many different levels. And you know, I've been busy with the kids, homeschooling them at the beginning of the year. My goodness, that was crazy. Working through the COVID chaos. And then, you know, just to top off the year, I thought I'd do a major renovation at home. So there's never a dull moment at the moment, both professionally and personally. But trail running sounds good. Great.
Well, I'll get you on. Send you the invite, because explore parts of Sydney you didn't realise existed.
Sounds good to me.
As a fellow Brit, who's like we both have spent a lot of time living in Australia, are you used to summer Christmases yet?
Oh, I am. I think this is my 15th Australian Christmas.
Yeah.
So now, warm, having seafood on Christmas Day, being at the beach, that for me is Christmas.
Yeah.
I think if I went back to the UK and had a cold, wintry Christmas, it'd come back to me, but it feels like a distant memory now.
Yeah.
And I love Christmases in Australia. They're the best. It's just to hang out. You get to go to the beach. Everybody's warm on Christmas Day and everybody's outside. So
it's different, isn't it? My kids who are grown up now, they remember when they were small Christmases in the UK, and they've been asking for a few years. It'd be great to go back. So we actually went back last year, and we spent Christmas and New Year in and around the UK, and it was really good. But I think the difference being, we knew when we finished in January, we were coming back to summer.
Yes, exactly.
Wave goodbye to everyone in the UK who were facing months of cold, horrible weather ahead.
It's a tough time between January and about March time in the UK is tough. But yeah, the lead up to Christmas is beautiful.
It is, cold nights and lots of mulled wine and mince pies.
Yeah, it is. It's a great time of year.
Yeah. Anyway, we could talk about that for a while. We'll get to your career.
Yes, let's do that.
So you've been all your career in sales. How did you first get in? Why did you choose sales?
It's a really interesting one. I was thinking about this. So when I left school, I actually joined a management program in a bank. And I did that for about 18 months, and it just wasn't for me. And so I took a step out of that, and I decided to live and work abroad for a little while and do some traveling. And then I came home and I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I took a contract role, and it happened to be a sales role. And that was in my early 20s. And you know, kind of went, oh, this is good. I enjoy, you know, going after, you know, driving for results. I enjoy being customer facing and delivering great customer service. I enjoy, the kind of cut and thrust of sales. So that was the beginning, really, and it was literally for me a stopgap of okay, what am I going to do after I came back from living abroad in my sort of late teens, and since then I don't think I've ever left a sales role. It's just kind of I've often looked around in different areas and definitely taken an interest in different areas, but I always kept coming back to sales. Yeah. No, this is I love it, and I love being at the coalface with the customer. So yeah, I've just always stayed.
Great.
But many conversations within my career have said, do I move to marketing? Do I move to category for a while? Do I even try HR? HR was something that I thought about. Logistics always interested me, intrigued me, but myself and my line manager always seemed to come to the conclusion, but you're kind of going to always end up back in sales and you love it. And I was like, yeah, I kind of do. And so I stayed.
Great. Okay. Well, 25 years later, it's obviously done you well. Yes. in terms of a career. And we fast forward to, you moved to Australia. You joined Allied Mills in 2006. Now, working on the commercial accounts, now that's a kind of the B2B industrial part. I think a lot of people assume that FMCG is always, consumer, but there is often a B2B component. And now, you when you moved from B2B then to kind of retail and the more true FMCG space, was that a difficult transition?
Not really. So when I landed with Allied Mills, I was in a B2B commercial role. In fact, one of my customers was Woolworths, but it was kind of a small part of my portfolio. And then I had other B2B customers, like for example, Arnott's, working with them. And I think there's lots of similarities. You're building a relationship built on trust. They expect a certain service from you. You deliver it. You talk through problems. You work together to problem solve. It's very, very much the same in terms of the deliverables that you have to bring to the role. And then not long actually in my tenure with Allied Mills, we started to do a lot more business, a lot more projects with Woolworths. And the opportunity came up to have a Woolworths national account manager, and I put my hand up because I'd really enjoyed working with them for the small amount of time that I had, and I thought, that sounds cool. I didn't think of it at the time as a step into sort of an FMCG-esque career. I just liked working with Woolworths. It was, very much an in-depth role, working with their WQA department at the time, and working on different private label projects, and I really enjoyed working with them. So I thought, that sounds great. I'll do that full time. And so I took the step into my first Woolworths NAM role without really thinking about at that point where it was going to take me in FMCG.
Okay, so you can almost created that career path for yourself, really.
I kind of did, but I did enjoy working on the B2B side, and it was great to work with some huge food manufacturers in Australia and get to know how their businesses worked. But it was a very interesting role.
Great. And you then moved from Allied Mills to Henkel, and working in different parts of the business there, different channels and categories within that business, ending up as head of corporate grocery. Did you set out during your time at Henkel to kind of try and pick up different experiences, or is that just the way the opportunities presented themselves?
Yeah, so the move from Allied Mills to Henkel was really deliberate, and I think at the time I'd been with Allied Mills 6 or 7 years, and I thought, okay, I need to think about where my career is heading, and if it's going to be, and I got some good advice at the time, if you want to be pure FMCG, you have to work in a very much a branded business, and very commercially focused business. And so I did make the move to Henkel to gain that experience, and I moved to Henkel as the Coles national account manager at the time. So and I think it was a deliberate move for me to do that, and I didn't see really at that point when I moved beyond a national account manager role. I think it was just, okay, I need to broaden my experience. I need to be pure FMCG if I want to have a long career here. And I moved to Henkel. And to be honest, the move for Henkel was a career move, but it was also a personal move as well. My son had been born a couple of years before that, and I was doing a really long commute, and the juggle, as it always is, was a struggle. And Henkel was a lot closer to home, and it was the right move for me, both personally and professionally. So it was a bit of a win-win, and a great choice in terms of making that move, but not really thinking 10 years out, really just thinking about, okay, what makes sense for me to shift and get into the right role.
Yeah, right. And now at SC Johnson, and in your second year as sales director there, and you may have heard and when I did Nick Dawes' podcast, he said, "Oh, you've got Claire coming on. Tell her to go easy and what she inherited." But it can't have been easy for you. I mean, you're in your second year as a sales director. You're facing into COVID. You know, the sort of thing that hopefully we'll never deal with once in our lifetime. But you know, for you, what sort of support did you get? Looking at the year that was.
The year that was. Well, firstly, the move to SC Johnson, you know, was a great career decision for me, and you know, I've loved the last 2 years working for them, and it was really it was an interesting move actually, because after working with Henkel for 7 years, I knew the processes, I knew the people, I knew the categories, I knew the business inside out, you know. So I moved to SC Johnson as a sales director, not knowing the processes and the people in the categories. So moving into a leadership role in a business where you know nothing was actually a really scary experience, and a fantastic opportunity for me to develop and put myself into a really uncomfortable situation where I wasn't the expert in the room, you know, and I had to let go and rely on my team, and you know, it's very fortunate. I have a great team at SC Johnson, and a great general manager in care who's very supportive and awesome. So that was a good move, but took me through a year of, you know, intense development from my perspective. But then COVID hit a year into my tenure, and you know, I think by then I was finding my feet anyway, so I feel lucky about that. If COVID had hit very early on, I think that would have been really difficult. I feel for those people who are onboarding during COVID, and we brought many people into our team during COVID, and it's really difficult because you lose that team connection and that face-to-face and talking to people. But through COVID, what support did I have? Look, we all as a team got a huge amount of support. You know, we have an amazing leader in care, and he kind of pivoted and shifted his leadership style very quickly. When we all realized what was happening, we were like, well, wow, how are we going to deal with this? And you know, in total SCJ way, it's like we put our team first and everything, and our people come first with everything. And we went, well, how are the team going to react? What do the team need from us? And how are we going to work through this? And to be honest, it was a really collaborative, supportive process going through COVID. We all worked together as a leadership team within SCJ. I think that we did a good job of wrapping our arms around each other and the broader team. And as I said, led by Kurt. And, you know, I felt very supported through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, just the simple things as well. It's silly, but, you know, we probably were on the back foot from a technology perspective. But within a month, I think, of COVID hitting, we fixed our technology issues, and working from home became a breeze. So just little things like that, I think, paved the way. But being a year into my tenure, I think helped, because I'd had that year of just settling in, getting to know everybody, you know, getting to know a bit more about the processes and the category. And then, okay, we're working virtual for a while. We can do this. Yeah, we can do this.
Good. I think your first point's a really good one that Jen Johnson made as well, around when you move to a business, you suddenly find yourself not the expert, you know, in the room, and you know, there's a time that you kind of take to understand, actually, I'm hired not to be the expert in the category here or in the systems, but actually for my leadership. Yeah, that's why I'm here. But the acceleration for you is really interesting. And you mentioned, you know, Kurt pivoted as a leader and had to refocus what was important to him. Did it change you as leader at all?
I think it just made me a lot more focused and aware of what was important. And what's important during those times of crisis is, you know, are the sales still rolling in? Is your supply chain still intact? Those things are less important. What's important is, am I okay? And is my team okay? Yeah. You know, how are they doing? And everybody reacted so differently to what went on. You know, some people were like, oh, you know, awesome, working from home, boom, I've got this. I'm really happy at home. Some people were terrified and scared and worried about their family, and there was all sorts of mixed reactions. And I think, you know, as a leader of a team, you have to to be across that and go, okay, well, what do the team need from me, and how can we work with them to make sure that they all feel like they're being heard and their different needs are being met, and how do we stay connected during a time of complete disconnection? You know, we literally pulled the cord, right? We went, okay, we're all working from home, and we went, but we're such a connected plus team. How do we maintain that? So we had to be very creative and come up with ways to make sure that, you know, we still had that camaraderie, we still had those regular conversations, we still got together. You know, I'm sure many companies have done the same thing. We had cocktail parties over Zoom and quiz nights, and, you know, we got together on a very regular basis, sometimes every day, just to connect as a team. So I think that helps tremendously through that time. Yeah,
as Pete White, who's on here from Campari, can attest. I think sales went okay during COVID for some of the liquor companies.
I think many FMCG businesses saw that spike in demand, and whilst that's, I mean, it came with its challenges, right? We all also had supply chain challenges that we all had to work through. We all saw the empty shelves, but yeah, it did bring some peak of sales, but I think that was, for us, that was great, and we dealt with that, and we tried to react and respond as quickly as we could, and work with the retail partners to make sure they knew our situation. But I think all of our first knee-jerk reaction was, okay, let's make sure the team are okay, because when the team's okay, you can run your business.
And looking back on the year, any particular successes or points you think, wow, we really came together and that was a fantastic piece of work or achievement?
I think the whole collaboration and maintaining that closeness as a team, that's a real challenge, you know, and it's a conscious decision, and it takes real action and thought to do it. It doesn't necessarily come naturally. So I think, you know, again, led by Kurt, but as a leadership team and as a wider team as well, we all did a really good job of going, okay, we just need to work differently, but we can do this. And I think I was really proud of that. We didn't, as a business, and many businesses will say the same thing, we didn't skip a beat, but we had to make that conscious decision to pivot the way that we were working together. And for that, I'm really proud. And I think as well how we dealt with the chaos and the crises of the peak of demand, and then the aftermath of that, which was dealing with all of the challenges and the disruption to our business. And I think we just, cross-functionally, you know, I believe we worked really well together. There was a huge amount of empathy, a huge amount of goodwill within the team, and I'm incredibly proud of that.
You know, a lot of people will know the name SC Johnson. It's a pretty familiar business in Australia, long history here, and maybe not so much the key drivers behind the business. I've always admired the business. I think that this commitment to people, it's a very family-oriented organization, with really strong values. In fact, the values are not new, but it feels as if they're still very modern and current. I think what's becoming more and more evident as the years go by as well is the commitment to the environment that the business has, and that feels to me like the decision making is often shaped around those two components. It'd be great to hear from you a little bit, somebody who's newer to the business. You know, in practical terms, how do those things come to the fore with SCJ?
Absolutely. And you know, I obviously did my research on SC Johnson before joining the business, and you know, I was really intrigued myself. Well, wow, it's a really huge commitment that they make to sustainability. And you know, they put people before profit. The privately owned business, you know, based in Wisconsin, US, and I was curious, and I remember, I'll tell you a story. I remember sitting down with Kurt for the very first time and having a coffee and talking about this role that he had available. And, you know, it was just a very informal chat. And the first thing he did, and the first thing he spoke about, was, I want to tell you about the values of my business, of SC Johnson. I want to talk you through our values and behaviors. And that got my attention, because I think as you get older as well, the values, behaviors, and the culture of a business is so important. You know, you spend a lot of time at work, and you want to feel like what you add to the business is valued, and that the people around you have the same behaviors, and that the culture is great and it's vibrant. So that really got my attention. I was quite curious, and then I went to SC Johnson's office, and it has the famous Herbert Johnson saying on the reception wall around the goodwill of the people is the only enduring thing in any business, and the rest is shadow. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I love that, and I'm really interested to see if this business really walks the talk. And then when I joined the business, I was delighted to find that it did. And we are very much family. We're very close. Like family, we disagree sometimes. That's okay. But we are very close as a team. And I think from a sustainability perspective as well, you know, we are actively involved as a team in that. You know, we do give locally to community charities, and also to national charities like Take 3 for the Sea. We do events with Take 3 for the Sea. We take it very seriously. And also through our products as well, we really push the sustainability agenda. And anybody who follows Fisk Johnson on LinkedIn will see some of the things we're doing with Plastic Bank and you know, the ocean bound plastic project that we're working on a global scale. So, you know, it's definitely a business that walks the talk. It doesn't just have its values on a wall. It is absolutely living and breathing. And, you know, as I say, it was a huge part of my decision to move to SCJ, and I'm very glad that I did, because it is very much, you know, in the DNA of who we are.
Yeah, I think often people assume that large corporates are all about, you know, profit, and it's the smaller agile businesses that fill those niches around, you know, what are perceived as trends on an environment or other issues. But you know, I think there's several businesses out there who like, an SCJ is a leading one in my view, who does walk the talk and does frame its decision making on, is it a good thing to do for our people and for the environment, in which case we do, if not we don't.
100%. And I feel, you know, the global response, and not just locally, but the global response of SCJ to COVID was immediately the team. How do we wrap our arms around the global team and keep everybody safe, which was wonderful. But I mean, yeah, absolutely, we put the people first, we put the environment first. But you know, I am really pleased to see that you're right. Sometimes it's easier for smaller businesses to pivot and do those agile things. You know, SC Johnson are a bigger one of the quite a large company, but still do a great job of that. But I'm seeing some amazing initiatives come through from some of the you know, juggernauts in our industry, and it's pleasing to see that, you know, the consumers are reacting as well, and there's a real need in the market to do that, because where there's a need, there's going to be supply, and I think that's a great pattern that we're building. But yeah, absolutely, there's some very exciting things happening with SCJ, and that's the way they've always been. If you look back in history with the business, that's the way they've always approached it. They put the people first, the environment first. They're a private company that can do that. Naturally, they want to make a profit, but they have their priorities, and they live and breathe their priorities. Which is awesome.
Back to your career, Claire. So, do you have specific goals in terms of the future? Do you set kind of longer term career goals?
You know, I always, in every move I've made, I've never set out my career to say in 10 years time I want to be here. I've always said I will keep going once I reach a point where I've maxed my capabilities, if you like. I always want to keep going and make sure I'm challenged and a little bit uncomfortable. I think being uncomfortable, a little bit on the edge, is a good place to be in your career. If you're in the flow and you're cruising, and you probably, it's time to step up and move on, maybe. But so I think it's always been, okay, what's the next step that's going to challenge me, as opposed to a prescribed career path that I should take. So, you know, right now my focus is to continue on my journey as a sales director. You know, I don't think you're ever fully accomplished in a role. And there's always things to learn, there's always areas to develop, and that's my focus. And I love it, and it challenges me every day, which is fantastic. And the next role for me, who knows? You know, I'll see how my sales directorship goes. But you know, down the track, you know, I'd definitely have a crack at a GM role. That's not completely out of the realms of possibility. But as I say, right now, I just want to be an excellent sales director, and that's important to me.
Great. And other experiences that you think would be useful to gather, whether it's either as a sales director or other roles or projects to be involved in that would continue to develop you, to give you that opportunity down the line to potentially be a general manager?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, and I look at my background, and it hasn't all been sales, because that's always been what I've loved. But when I talk to other people and you know, they're looking at what's the next role for them, I definitely think what's an awesome idea at some point in your career is to take a step sideways into another cross-functional department, whatever you choose that to be. I think there's a lot of power in doing that. I think it looks fantastic on a resume because it shows that you're flexible and that you're open, and that you can show different capabilities as well. And you know, that's not on my resume, but it's something I think about often, going, maybe I should have done that, but you know, I didn't, and that's okay. For me now, I think for me it's just broadening my scope as a sales director, as opposed to just, you know, the basics of a sales director role. I am trying to work on different projects on a regional basis within the business as well, just to make sure that, you know, I've got a very good indication of what's happening regionally and globally, and within the business as well, working on different projects that are not just in my silo. You know, I don't really, it's not how I work anyway. I'm very curious, and I like to know what's happening in other departments and work with other people. So I think it's just being as broad as I can be with the things that I work on. So yeah, and that's, as I said, it's important. But you know, looking back and when people talk about their career and they're thinking about sideways movement, absolutely do it. Even if you know that you will come back to the function that you're in because that's what you love, do a 2 or 3 year go at something else and just try it and get that on your resume. I think it's very powerful, and it's been seen more and more as a real positive thing on your resume these days. So
yeah, completely. One of the things we've talked a lot about in this program, and if you look back at your career, Claire, you know, it's yes, you've got this great 15-year FMCG sales career, but preceding that, you've kind of got a lot of experience in other markets, geographies, channels, B2B, and others. So it's
broad in different ways to a traditional FMCG career. Yeah, absolutely. And then it's become less broad in the last sort of 10 years.
Yeah. Sure. And thinking also on the theme of development, do you have a personal development plan, or does SCJ give you one? How does it work for you?
Yes, I do have a development plan, and you know, I think SCJ are very good at being very focused and structured on this, which is fantastic. I've worked in businesses where there isn't a formal development plan process. I have one, my team has one, and we live and breathe that document. It's talked about at least on a quarterly basis to check in. How are we doing? Is it still relevant? Do I need to change it up? You know, how are we tracking on all the things that we wanted to work on? And I would say I've probably had a development plan for the, you know, thinking back. I developed one with Henkel, and you know, but I think what's really important with development plans is, and something that probably didn't click with me in my 20s, but kind of did in my 30s, is you're the one in control of a development plan. You have to, you as an individual have to drive it, and you know, build it up and really own it. I think, you know, expecting to be delivered a development plan is probably a mistake, because line managers were very busy people, and you know, sometimes they're not going to finesse an amazing development plan for you. You're going to have to take the reins, and I think that's incredibly important. So I think development plans are great. It keeps you on track, keeps you focused on your development areas. We all have them. And I encourage you. And if you work in a business that doesn't have a formal development plan, that's okay. You know, there are plenty of templates out there. Just make one up and have a chat with your line manager. And I think that's something that's really well received.
Yeah, I remember an earlier program talking to Eugene at Virtual Weight, who has his own one he brings to every company, and presents his new MD with his plan and said, "This is all about me." So it doesn't have to just be the company one. You can, that's
true. Yeah, absolutely.
There is I was going to say there's a very nice comment from Kurt in there, just complimenting you. It's not a question, but just saying, and being an excellent sales director, I have a confident, say mission accomplished Claire, giving you goodbyes. That's very nice.
Well, very nice. Thank you.
So we've discussed the importance through this program of diversity and bias, and where the sales function is on that journey. And have you seen a change during your career to how organizations actually understand concepts like bias and diversity?
100% I have, and it's not just gender diversity that I've seen the difference in. So if I go back, wow, a long time, 15 years ago when I first went to a Woolies supplier event, it was then a very small minority were females, very small minority, and really noticeable. It kind of shocked me. But that's 15 years ago, and a lot has changed. And now when you go to such events, it is absolutely a mix, which is fantastic. And not just a mix of male and female. It's becoming more and more diverse, and which is really encouraging. I don't think we're all the way there. I think we've got a long way to go, but I think we're becoming more open in terms of it doesn't have to fit a certain model of person that we have to bring into the business, and I think one of the things sometimes as an industry we can be a little bit blinkered on, and for the right reasons, is bringing somebody in who has had FMCG experience before, as opposed to bringing them in from a wider business industry. I was lucky enough because I made the shift within Allied Mills.
You made it happen.
Yeah, but I appreciate there are amazing people out there that want to join the FMCG industry, that don't necessarily have that pure FMCG background. And I try where I can to be a little bit more open in my thinking in terms of who we bring into the business. Yeah,
it's sort of a bugbear in mind how narrow-minded we are, and we open up a little bit of opportunity. Or I try and open up opportunity briefs I take, and you present a left field candidate who's super interesting, but rarely do they actually get the job.
Yeah,
it's fair to be said. We're very safe in our decision making. So I'd love to think we have this chat 5 years down the line. We've come a long way
absolutely
in accepting the fact that diversity is more than gender, and we've still got a long way to go in that. But bringing in really different thoughts and experiences. From a variety of backgrounds makes us more powerful.
100%. Diversity of thinking. It's not just the physical diversities that we have. It's the diversity of thinking, and when you have that broad diversity of thinking within a team, that's incredibly powerful. That's the collective genius that you're looking for, right?
Absolutely. I think COVID's been interesting because it's accelerated our understanding of the benefits of flexible working. You talked about how SCJ very quickly, drove through technology change to make that happen. And the traditional view of fixed location working, which is one of the big barriers that limits people who have diverse needs from fully engaging in the workforce. Do you worry that we'll snap back and dismiss flexible working when we're through COVID?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think, look, whilst COVID has brought incredible challenges to all of us personally and professionally, I think one of the great things that's come from COVID is it squashed those naysayers' thoughts on flexible working can't work. It's not going to work. We won't be connected. We won't be necessarily productive. And people are just going to take the mickey and go to the beach. I think the actual reality is people are smart and loyal and committed, and actually really appreciate the work-life blend that working from home brings. And it's something that I've always believed in myself. I've worked from home probably 1 day a week for the last 10 years, and I've done that because I am juggling children and work, and I actually get a lot done at home. That's my thinking day when I'm at home, and I get no distractions and people conversations around me. But I think what COVID brought was it was like a huge test, wasn't it? It was like a sociology test. What would happen if we took everybody out of their physical offices, put them at home, and said, let's keep running the business? Did everything fall over? No, it didn't. I think the isolation was a struggle for a lot of people, including myself sometimes. I do realize I like a balance, and that's what's come out of COVID is I really like connecting with people face to face. But I also like those times where I can just be at home and just think and do and churn through my admin and whatever needs to be done. So I personally don't think we will snap back all the way. I think we will go back to, working in the offices. And I think that's the right thing. When I look at the city, it's starting to come back to life. Cafes are starting to open again. It's going to be a slow burn, but I think we'll get there. And I think it's good that we will maintain that human connection. And we're humans. It's in our DNA. But I feel like we have turned the corner with those naysayers that said, I don't think there's many businesses now that don't have a flexible working policy, but for those businesses that were a little bit leaning towards that, I feel like COVID has kind of flipped the switch for them, which is awesome. And it's the 21st century, and it's how we should be, and we should absolutely trust our team to do the right thing, and they always do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do hear a few worrying conversations and just signs that some companies are going to flip all the way back. But I think they'll find themselves in a tough place in terms of culture, talent retention, talent attraction, because the expectation is that actually we all know that it works.
Yeah,
it can work.
100%.
And through an extreme period of isolation, we made it work. So if we can choose to put in a pattern that enables us to collaborate in the office, but also collaborate at home, because we've shown that so many technology platforms, whether it's things like Zoom we're using today, Teams, Slack, all these channels. I mean, Slack was just bought for what, 27 billion, I think, by Salesforce. So there's extraordinary value in those platforms because they work.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really interesting, and for those very traditional companies, I think there'll be a few who probably do snap back, but I think they will not snap back for long.
No,
because they'll very quickly realize that, okay, we are King Canute against the tide here.
Exactly. I think the tide has turned on that one, and I think maybe COVID has brought us forward a few years in terms of how we were already moving in that direction. I mean, SCJ is a very flexible company, and we have flexible working, but even we're going, okay, well, what does post-COVID look like for us? We're thinking about not snapping all the way back. We're thinking about, what are our team going to need post all of this? And we're already thinking about the next sort of 6 to 12 months and what that might look like.
Really. I think 2021 is going to be a fascinating year for all sorts of reasons, which we may get into later. But on the kind of talent, recruitment theme, I often get asked for my advice about someone entering into a recruitment process with me, or just generally, often people asking for advice generally about recruitment, about how to raise the question on their needs for flexible working. And I think
it's a good question.
It's a really interesting question, because a lot of people, it's not just, hey, I really, my need is I want to go to the beach at lunchtime. Now that's a nice to have, but there's a lot of genuine needs around. I've got things I've got to do in order to make my life function. And flexible working enables that to happen, but they struggle with how to raise that, with a fear, because they'll come across as an uncompetitive person who's not committed. What would your advice be as a senior leader to someone who's in that position?
No, it's a great question. My children now, my eldest is nearly 12 next week, and I've had to have that conversation many times through my career. Now, the good news is, over the last 12 years, it's gotten easier to have those to ask those questions. But I think still through the interview process, you still have that feeling of going, I need flexible working. And you may need that not because you have children. You may need it because you have an outside interest that needs you to be, out early in the morning, but, I might just need to start a little bit later than the norm, whatever the norm is these days. I think it's getting better. And generally, during the interview process, a company who really lives and breathes their flexibility will actually offer up the information. They'll say, and by the way, guys, this is our flexible working. This is generally how we work. These are our core hours. This is how most people, and we have people in the business with families and with hobbies and things like that. And we will flex and we'll make it work. I actually offer that up sometimes, that information in interviews, because I know it's a question that people feel awkward about. But I think when you do need to ask the question to a business, whether you're in the business already or you during the recruitment process, don't be afraid to ask it, but also offer up what you're going to give in return. So a business is going to go, okay, this person needs to work, I don't know, start at 10 and finish at 7, whatever the case may be. But say, I'm just making this up, but if that's the case, they go, but by the way, I will be available. I'll be on mobile from 8:30 till 10. You just physically won't be there until 10 a.m. Would you be comfortable with that? Now, and this is what I'll do for you to make sure I make it work. If somebody has thought through the solution and thought through how that's going to impact the business, that's really powerful. And I don't think you should be afraid to ask the question. Things are changing. You know, and most people who are interviewing would need some sort of flexibility in their lives, whether they're parents or as I say, they have other outside interests or other family commitments. And most people these days, you know, don't fit into that sort of pigeonhole of I'm in the office from this point to this point every single day and nothing ever changes. You know, I feel like we've turned the corner on that.
Yeah, so I certainly hope so. I think you know, back to 2021, my view and it's consolidated view with lots and lots of conversations I have with companies and people, but also looking at a lot of the economic indicators that we're going to be in a very strong year in terms of economy and consequently, therefore, organizations are already feeling confident about making decisions around bringing in talent. I think I mentioned on the call a couple of weeks ago with Jamie that 85% of the roles that we did a measure 2 weeks ago that we've had over the past month have been newly created positions. That's unheard of in terms of the number of roles. Another positive sign. Now, what that means is that there's going to be we're going to be walking into a talent short market again, and when it comes to being a talent short market, organizations have got to be bloody competitive. And if they're on the fence or if they're at all overly traditional in their view around flexible working, then they're going to miss out on a lot of people who just have diverse needs.
100%.
You know, not everybody can fully engage in the traditional way. And why would you shut yourself off from talented people, whether it's people returning to work after you know, children or looking after elderly parents or career breaks, whatever it happens to be, you know, who are newly facing into the need for flexible working, or those who have made it work for years anyway. Why would you shut yourself off from those talent pools? So I think companies who traditionally have done that are going to find themselves, you know, with a decreasing quality of individual as they lose out continually to those who are embracing diversity and flexibility and actually winning the war for talent. So I think it'll be a really interesting year, quite defining. So I think by the time we get to the end of the year, there'll be very few left standing who are in that traditional mindset of working.
I think when you survey people who are looking at moving to companies and what's important to them, you know, obviously salary and the monetary side of it will always be high on the rankings, but values and flexibility are right up there in the top 3 to 5. So and that's going to continue to be very important. So we need to shift our thinking as 21st century businesses, and it just has to be part of who we are. And you know, I think most businesses are there now, but to your point, if you're not there, you're either going to struggle to get new talent in, or you're going to lose talent to the people who have that flexibility. And it's the new norm, right? It's we measure performance, not presence now. You know, we've turned that corner. And you know, we as I said, we live and breathe it in SCJ, and COVID has just fast forwarded that whole process for sure.
Performance, not presence. Great. I like that. So one of the things that frustrates me, as I've said throughout this program, I'm going to be careful I don't just talk about my frustrations all the time, but it's seeing people not reach their potential. That's one of the principal reasons why I started this. In your experience, why do you think some people's careers reflect that potential and others don't?
Oh, look, it could be a myriad of reasons. And I think, you know, the first one would be maybe, and I'll share with you that, you know, probably a learning from my side. And when I joined Henkel, 9 years ago now, 9 years ago, you know, I was really lucky to go on a leadership program with Henkel quite early on in my tenure with them. And through that process, I did my first ever 360-degree feedback. You know, pretty terrifying going through a 360-degree feedback. Oh, what does everybody think of me? And I remember, you know, obviously there was some good things that came from that. I thought, okay, that's good to know that those are my strengths. And then there was this really interesting thread that went all the way through a number of the comments, which was like, Claire's got good sales results, and she's really nice, she's good at her job, but we don't really know who Claire is. Like, she runs into the office and she squirrels away in the corner and she runs out again, and and in different ways they all said roughly the same thing. I was, wow, that's really interesting. I never really thought I'd see myself as somebody who's outgoing, loves to chat, but of course I was in that life stage where my son was 2, I think, at the time, and I was racing to kindy, going to do my work, squirreling away in the corner, going to kindy, going to pick up, and off I went. And what I wasn't doing, and I realize in hindsight now, is I wasn't actually raising my profile within the business. And I wasn't, not that you have to walk around the aisles and kind of, beat your chest and say, look how amazing I am. It's absolutely not that. And I certainly wouldn't do that. But it's like, just, building a network outside of your team and outside of your pod, and making sure that you hang out with supply chain and you know what's going on there, and you get to know everybody, cross-functionally and across different business units, if you have different business units as well. And I realized that I had to make a really strong effort to raise my profile. And that's one of the things I think is making sure to build your career and to drive your career forward is, do you have the right profile internally? I mean, you can have a profile, but it might not be the right one, but have a good professional and the right profile. Make sure people can see the work that you're doing. And if you feel like you are not being seen, have a chat with your line manager and go, I'd love to get involved in a project that, maybe I could present in front of the GM one day or something like that, just to kind of raise who you are and what you're doing. And I got that feedback through the 360. It's probably one of the biggest aha moments of my career, where I went, I have to really work at this. And I have to speak to my line manager and say, can you help me? What do you think I should do? It doesn't come naturally to me. So what do you think I should do? And make it as time efficient as possible, because I have a 2-year-old that I'm trying to raise as well with my husband. So I think, that's really powerful. And then, as I mentioned earlier, just driving your development plan and making sure you keep it living and breathing document. And keep having those conversations and working through it are really important. And then the other things that you can do is mentors who are have been pivotal in some of my career turning points. Again, to just check in with them, make sure that you're working on the right things, make sure you have that right profile, make sure you're on the right career path as well.
I think that's great advice. A question I was going to ask, which I think you kind of answered there, is around the individual who feels sometimes they're they're stuck in a role and they're not getting forward momentum, or they perhaps missed a promotion, or and they had that kind of forward only focus. But actually, there's many different ways you can develop yourself.
Yes.
Other than just going for the role in front of you. I think exactly what you described there, talking to your manager about what experiences you might be able to gather in terms of projects, or where you might gain connections or exposure in other areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without that, it's very difficult to actually develop yourself. But that gives you opportunity to see the business from other perspectives. I think that's really powerful advice. Curious a point you made earlier on as well around things that stand out on a resume for you. When you're looking at someone's resume, whether it's an internal applicant for a role or somebody you're looking at from an external perspective, what are the is there common things that make a good resume for you, that a good CV stand out?
I think this is the basics of a really well put together resume. It makes I know it's very old school, but a well documented resume, not too wordy, not too short, well written, well structured, easy to read. You'd be amazed how quickly sometimes people scan through resumes and we just want to catch headlines, right? And so it's such 101 basic stuff, but absolutely get your resume right and get other people to look at it as well and get their thoughts, because it's something I see still happening is the mistake. There's some amazing templates out there, so you really don't have to reinvent the wheel to do that. But that's just kind of basic stuff. But I think I'd be looking for somebody who's had a breadth of experience, and I think we've talked about this, and if they've had national account manager experience, but then they've had category or marketing, and then they've maybe come back, or they're trying to come back. That would be actually, I'd look at that and go, great, their last role, 2 roles were marketing and category. They have some sales background here. That's an awesome broad experience they've got to bring to the business. So just because their last role wasn't a national account manager doesn't mean they wouldn't catch my attention.
Yeah.
So I think looking at, and I think just having a good cadence as well. It doesn't mean that you have to move on every 2 years, not at all. I mean, I've been in businesses 7 years. I seem to have a 7-year pattern in the last 3 businesses I've been in. Don't ask me why. That's a pure coincidence.
You've got it for 5 more years, Kurt.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in my early days with SCJ, but having that good cadence, even if you stayed with the business for 15 years, how have you set out that 15 years? And there might be periods of time where you have sort of treading water. I mean, I did that myself. I was in a national account manager role for Woolworths and then Coles, the other way around, for a reasonable amount of time. And that was okay, because I was building a huge amount of knowledge and experience, and I was working on a leadership program, and I was doing projects, and I had 2 children as well at the same time. So that worked for me, but I was still making sure I was moving on. So I think just having that cadence of and making sure that the career makes sense. But as I say, it doesn't have to be prescriptive. It doesn't have to be, I'm a NAM now, and therefore I'm going to be a national account manager next. That's definitely, I like to think a little bit outside the box when looking at resumes.
Yeah, good. I see a lot of them, and it is amazing how experienced you get at identifying how quickly you can look at a resume and understand, is that the right person for a role or not. So you've got to make it easy and clear to read.
Oh, for sure.
The story is very simple to tell. You want to know quickly context of where that person works, what do they do there, and what impact have they had. Yeah, that's the story you should tell very quickly, and often it's too wordy. So but good advice. Now, Claire, I've asked every sales director this, and it's already starting to get played back a lot in recruitment processes that either I'm running or I'm hearing of people going through, which is quite amusing. But when interviewing a candidate, what impresses you most, and what can frustrate you?
That's a great question. Yeah, and I think what impresses me the most is when, again, it's things never change. It's somebody who is really looked into the business and knows the business. And every single interview, I will say, "What do you know about our business?" And after that, I will say, "And what makes you want to join our business?" So I want to make sure that they haven't just gone, "Oh, look, there's a role, I'll just click apply and join," because we can apply like that to roles these days now. We don't even have to think about it. You just click a box, right? But I want to make sure that they've thought it through, because, as I said, our values are very important to us. Our behaviors, our culture is precious. And when we bring people in, we want to make sure that they're coming into us because they appreciate what we do and who we are and what we're about. And it's not just about our brands, but it's about who we are as people and our sustainability agenda and our values, etc. And they've really looked at that and they've thought about it. So do your research is the first piece of advice. I think secondly, what frustrates me is when I get to the end of an interview and I go, do you have any questions? And they don't. I go, wow, really? If you really, this could be your business that you work in for the next 10 years and you don't have any questions for me. Like, I just kind of want to go, are you sure you don't want to ask me about flexibility or what we do as a social club? All the questions that people go, oh, would that be the right question to ask? Just ask them, and just silly things like, have they brought in a notepad and pen? I mean, maybe I'm a bit Gen X in that one, but maybe even if it's an iPad and you're scrolling on an iPad, it's fine. But, have they thought through questions, and that shows me that they're really engaged. They're really up for the recruitment process. And then the third one is be ready to answer the very simple question, give me an overview of your career. Because, and I'm telling you this because I made this mistake. And somebody asked me that question. I was like, oh my gosh, how do I summarize 25 years? And it's such a simple question. Give me an overview of your career. But if somebody has not thought through going, why did I make all of these steps? And, what was each move about? Even if there was no real connection between them, just have an answer for that question. Because in some way, even if it's not asked exactly like that, it will be asked in some format, and don't be caught out, because it's a huge question to ask, particularly if you've got a 15 to 20 year career, before you. Being able to articulate where you've come from and what you've gained and what you've experienced in that time is it's quite a difficult question to ask and one that you've got to rehearse.
Yeah, some great advice there. I think to that last point, that narrative is something we've discussed a lot in this program, and being able to know your narrative
exactly.
is super important. Whether it's a 3-year career or a 30-year career,
yes,
knowing that narrative and having that 5-minute answer,
exactly,
which shows a lot about you as an individual.
It does.
It's super powerful, and it seems the most easy question of all to answer. It's probably the most difficult.
Yes,
to get right.
It is, so, and I got caught out on it, and I probably bumbled my way through it, and then went, I'll never make that mistake again. And I made sure next time I had a very good narrative, and I thought it through. How would I answer that question?
Great. Well, before we get into open questions, Claire, let's sum up today's session with the 3 pieces of advice that you would give somebody on the program who aspires to be a sales director.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's take control of your career, and make sure that people around you know what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and how you're going to get there, and what your development areas are. Act as if you are already making that step upwards. And I think some people will kind of think that the next move is going to get spoon-fed to them. But act like you're a sales director. As a sales director, you have to be very holistic in your thinking. You're not just very razor-sharp focused on one customer. And when you are in a national account manager, national business manager role, your job is to advocate for that customer internally, 100%. But you also need to show the possibility that you can think outside of that box as well, and I can think broadly across the business. So act like you're kind of working towards that sales director, more broader thinking approach. This is what my customer needs, and I'm advocating for my customer. However, I do really appreciate and understand the knock-on effect of here, and here. So that makes people go, okay. So they're thinking outside the square, and they've got that broader, more strategic way of looking at things. And I think you need to be able to show that you can make the step up before you make the step up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think being able to demonstrate those behaviors and really thinking that through is super important. And I think the third one as well for me, that's been really helpful for me is when at certain times in your career, mentors can be incredibly powerful. And there's times where I was probably at a point in my career where I was pretty much ready to quit. I was juggling the whole work life and raising children and the pressures of the job, and I just physically can't do it. And I went onto a formal mentoring program with Henkel at the time, and had this amazing mentor, Susan O'Neill, and she basically helped me to go, well, you can be a working mum, you can juggle everything. There's just things you've got to let go. There's things you've got to do differently, and you've got to think differently as well. And she gave me this amazing advice, and she just kind of broke it all down for me, and that made me go, right, okay, I've got this. I ripped up my resignation letter, which I think I had written at the time, and went, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to let a lot go, and I'm going to get myself into a different mindset, and I'm going to put myself forward. And that really kind of changed me. So I think, make sure that you take control of things like mentors, coaches, asking a line managers that, I've done a couple of women in leadership programs as well over the last sort of 8 years. And I think the first one I went into was just so impactful. I remember the speakers to this day and what they said and what they spoke about, and that was a huge unlock for me as well. So make sure you take control and proactively go after those things, because at certain points in your life and your career, they can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, great points, Claire. Thank you. The last point you made there actually does remind me of a conversation we had before this, and actually I was also talking with Caroline Waite, who's been on the program yesterday, and I was reflecting a little bit on our conversation around confidence.
Yes.
And to get Caroline's take on it as well, and how it can be one of those difficult topics that can actually really impact someone's decision making, their whether, particularly when it comes down to career, whether it's staying in your career, as you're alluding to there, or going for a particular role, having that the confidence to do that can be a very fickle thing. And I think in particular, from a gender perspective, a lot of fantastically high performing female salespeople I've met can struggle with that, struggle with confidence.
Absolutely. No, it's a great question, and you're right. It's the elephant in the room, right? It's one of those things that I think we're getting better at talking about, but doesn't get spoken about a huge amount. And we talk about things that can hold us back in our career. It can be the fact that you haven't got a huge profile or had a formal development plan, or sometimes it's just pure luck, being in the right place at the right time. But I think if I take a slightly sort of female slant on it, I think one of the biggest things that holds women back is confidence. And confidence in our ability to be able to step up and have a voice, and that fear of failure and fear of judgment and fear of getting it wrong, or fear of putting somebody out because you have an opinion, absolutely holds us back. And I'm generalizing, right? It's not all women, but through many conversations I've had throughout my career with other peer women and people within my team is it's always going to be there. We don't have a silver bullet to flick the switch on. How do we get women more confident? It's not as easy as just giving them a book and saying, go read that and you'll be fine. It's a conversation we've got to have constantly. Self-doubt, imposter syndrome. Every single woman at every single level of any business deals with that every single day. And there's some amazing books out there that I could highly recommend. And there's a book called The Confidence Code, which is written by two women, two journalists, New York Times journalists, and I forget their names, but it's a fantastic book, and it's just full of interviews, full of women CEOs, high-ranking military women, and every single one of them has self-doubt and self-confidence issues. But what they've found is a way through. And I think that's the key, is you've got to find, okay, I'm never going to be 100%, resilient and confident and back myself on every move. There are times I'll still walk into a room and have imposter syndrome, no question. But I think what you have to do is find your own way to deal with that. And for me, that's been, the aha moments for me have been having a mentor. It's been attending women in leadership programs where you've got very senior women standing up in front of a room of women going, I have to take myself into a toilet cubicle before I present and have a good chat with myself and build myself up, because the imposter syndrome can be absolutely overwhelming. And then I come in that toilet and I shut my mind off, and I stand in front of people, and in my mind I'm going, oh shit, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? But I just have to get on with it. So we have to find a way through that. There's no easy solution. We are who we are, but it's in our DNA. But I think the more we talk about it, the more open we are about it, the more that we can bring women up and raise their confidence, is going to be incredibly powerful, and it will make sure that we start to bring more and more females into senior levels, because I genuinely believe, through my own experience and speaking to many other women, that is the one thing that holds us back, the biggest thing that holds us back. And I would say 99% of the time, the women that I speak to have huge amounts of capability, capacity. They just go, oh, no, I couldn't do that. And they'll say, because maybe I'm not good enough, or I've got children and I just don't think I can be a great mum and a great wife and have a career. You can. You just got to find a way to control those, I say, voices in your head. We're not all going crazy, but there is that self-doubt that holds us back, and it's definitely the elephant in the room, but it's something that has to be spoken about. And there's some amazing people out there. The Leaning book by Sheryl Sandberg it should be a Bible to all young women heading into business. Brené Brown has done some amazing work on vulnerability and shame and self-doubt and things like that. And, read a lot, go to women in leadership programs, speak to other women, get a woman mentor who'll bring you up and say, look, it's okay, it's normal. Everybody feels like that. You just got to find your way through. And if you can do that, that's a huge unlock for any woman. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Pleasure.
Fantastic. Guys, I think we're up to 9 o'clock just after, so
oh wow. I talked a lot.
Apologies we didn't get to some of the questions, but that was we covered a lot. That was absolutely superb. So thank you, Claire.
Thanks, Mike.
That brings us to the end of Sales Vector Incubator 2020. Thanks to all 12 of our sales vectors, to Claire Smith, to Louise Baker, Swati Prasad, Jonathan Morley, Eugene Visioni, Ben O'Brien, Caroline Waite, Peter White, Chris Bergen, Jen Johnson, Nick Dawes, and Jamie Easley, a fantastic group of people, and so many things we've covered over the 12 sessions. I set this program up because of my frustrations. I keep mentioning that people don't quite realize their potential, not as many should do as they should. And I wanted to showcase a real kind of diverse group of sales directors to really highlight every pathway is different. And when we use things such as the McKinsey's T model, we've talked about the patchwork quilt, the jigsaw, the checkerboard, the reality being that it's not just the upward steps that make the sales director, it's the sideways steps, the points of reflection, the backward steps, sometimes the diagonal steps that gather the breadth of experiences that enable those individuals to keep going and be highly effective in their roles. So I generally thought I'd get about 20 or 30 keen bean nams on this program who would be dedicated followers, but we've got close to 400 people now either tuning into the live session or downloading the Your Future in Sales and Marketing podcast. So it's really landed well. The feedback we've had from the marketplace about the benefits it's having across the board is great. So we're going to keep this going into 2021, guys, but want to ensure we develop it, make it relevant. I've got a whole bunch of sales directors, including a number of GMs and CEOs who have asked to come on and share their story and share their journey. I'd love to kind of deliver that in an ongoing way, but I also want to address particular topics. So I'd love to get your feedback on that. So please drop me a note, and we're going to send out a survey as well. So your guidance will help create this program, make it relevant for you. I know a lot of you are going to be going into your appraisals and review conversations in the next couple of months. So I really hope that those conversations are going to reach different levels. They're going to you're going to have your narrative sorted. You're going to have a plan. And you're going to have some confidence about your decision making, and it's going to be really collaborative in terms of the language that you use, not just what's in it for you, but what's in it for the business as well. And I'd love to hear how those conversations go. Not in a negative way. I don't want you all phoning me up to tell me you want to leave. I want to hear how well your plan is looking. Thanks for everybody for joining us over the last few months. The final Marketing Director Incubator runs next week with Derek Oliver on Thursday. He's Marketing Director at Blackmores. You're very welcome to join that program. If you've missed any of the sessions, then the podcast again, Your Future in Sales and Marketing, available on Spotify. You can also scan the QR code on your screen now. That's how modern we are. I think we're all used to scanning QR codes by now. And that will take you straight to the podcast, and all 16 episodes are on there across sales and marketing. So that's us for 2020. Thanks again, Claire, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Such a good conversation.
Great.
Guys, have a wonderful Christmas and all the best for 2021.